episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the second week of December 2011. This episode is titled Slowbooks. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, your cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Alwood, and joining me for the 72nd time in a row is the co-host and co-broadcaster, Justin Elsing. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm alright. I just wiped the cold out of my eyes.
The cold out of your eyes?
Yeah.
All right. It's the end of a cold Thursday. We took a cold turn here in New York.
A little bit. Not that bad.
It's gonna get cold here. It's gonna be like highs of 41, lows of 30s. That's getting colder.
I did tweet yesterday about how it was cloudy outside.
Yeah.
Bump.
Yeah.
And
did you enjoy those cloudy days?
I did, because there are umbrellas everywhere in Times Square. When there are drops of rain, people get the umbrellas and they get poked in the eyes and stuff.
Of course you do. All right, so speaking of getting poked in the eyes, we have an agenda. We got our social enterprise blog post, part 1.
Part uno.
Of the series. We have a question. Where is Quickbooks and Salesforce? We have Intacct going for the trifecta of a Salesforce integration. And then we have a couple other little things like a company banning email. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about our move to Google Wave, off of Google Wave, and how it's been going. You have here a panel discussion.
I wrote that. Panel discussion.
Not in Google Wave. It's actually in Google Docs is where we ended up. But we'll talk about that. So first things first, let's talk about the blog post this week, which was?
It was titled Creating a Social Enterprise with Salesforce.com, Part 1.
Part 1. And
Part 1 of this blog takes a look at what truly defines the social enterprise. So Part 1 is more about defining some keys to becoming a social enterprise, where I believe Part 2 will dive into some of the tools, some of the ammunition that you can use to actually achieve your goals that you set forth in Phase 1. And as the partner who shall remain nameless so eloquently wrote, he had 2 steps. 2 short and easy steps.
Of Part 1.
Part
2 could have like 17
Part
steps.
2 will likely have more steps. But
right.
Step 1, listen closely.
Okay.
So listen, it says the concept of listening to your customers is clearly not a new one.
Right.
But there are now more ways to listen, more avenues for your customers to talk. So you have to get out there and start monitoring and listening to what your customers are saying. And it's easier for them.
Well, they're also really not talking to you.
No, they're talking about you.
They're talking out and about you. And I think that's a nice, way of thinking about it, is that it used to be they would talk to you. They would talk, they would call you, they'd go to your website.
And you controlled that.
Right, and you controlled the end. Now it's like, I'm not talking to Nike, I'm just talking about Nike.
Nike, not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. There's only one sponsor of this podcast forever and always. So, yeah, definitely. That's a good step 1.
So, go out there. There are plenty of social media outlets, blogs, wikis, YouTubes, and the like. So, start listening. And his second step was making a friend request.
Okay.
So, actually becoming closer to your customer by, not through a focus group, not through a traditional rewards program, but actually engaging in this conversation that your customer may or may not know that you're listening to.
Right. Here's the thing. We went to CloudForce.
We did.
We've talked about social enterprise now for a while.
We have been.
And I went back and had to explain it. As a good thing, it's like being a teacher. Like, in order to teach something, you need to know it, or you need to understand it. So I went back to explain it to my wife.
Oh, that's a good test.
It was a good test.
I know your wife.
Right, you know my wife.
Did you put her to sleep?
I did not. She actually was very interested in it. And I basically went on, it was a pretty long conversation. Well, not long, but like 20 minutes. And I basically, came down to, to me, and again, this is my view on the social enterprise, it's really about saying it's about these things that were corporations, that were organizations, these these logos, turning them from logos and from, corporations, these sort of blank slates, turning them into something that people are interacting with on a social level. And it's the two-way street of the corporation seeing you socially, right? So Arkus sees people who follow it on Twitter and follow it on Facebook as social things. We're connected to them socially. But also, people have and I think I mentioned this in one of the last podcasts, people would tweet it at us, at Arkus Inc., and they go, hey, I miss at Arkus Inc. at CloudForce. I'm sorry I didn't get to see you guys. They're not talking to Justin. They're not talking to Jason.
I think they're talking to me.
But no, they're not. They're talking about a company.
Right.
And think about like the Old Spice commercials, right? Old Spice with this campaign where it's kind of interacting with people on Twitter. That to me is part of it. It's like, that's part of it, is that the company is no longer just this logo and this big corporate headquarters. It's the social being that is talking and interacting with people on that one-to-one ratio. And of course there's people behind it, but the facade is that these are people, that the company is bigger than just this corporation. It has a social entity to it. You can
It has a soul.
It has a soul, I guess. The other part to me on the social enterprise is taking that as making, it's obviously the chatter stuff, which is making internally, pulling social internally, making the things that you do, like updating an invoice, making a social thing around it, mentioning someone, tagging it socially internally. So, but anyway, yeah. So creating a social enterprise with Salesforce, part 1. Read it on blog.arkusinc.com and leave a comment. And socially, someone will get back to you. Socially,
maybe
social,
probably
should be a drinking game. So my question:
did you catch the acronym that Mark Benioff created out of the word social? He created an acronym. No, social was an acronym. He made into an acronym.
Oh, he took a word and made
it an acronym?
He took
social and then associated, like, S stood for something. O, C.
No.
All I remember was L, was leaderless. That was the only one I can remember. But I'm sure if you go watch the video or something, he created some acronym out of social. It's weird. Anyway.
Here's what's weird.
Tell me.
Back in April, and I think we brought this up on a podcast.
No, I don't want to tell you this, but this post here was from April 1st.
Yes.
So maybe it was all a big ruse.
You think this is an April Fool's joke?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But go ahead. It could always be said, this was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, it was also a press release that I read.
Oh, that's true.
So back in April, on the 1st, that was put out was that Salesforce and Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks and Quicken and all sorts of quick products,
QuickBooks Online,
QuickBooks Offline, whatever, we're going to come up with a joint product where the QuickBooks Online would have a built-in synchronization with Salesforce.
Yep. And
this would be available. That was in April, and it is now the end of the year, December, and I have not heard anything about it.
Well, I'm rereading this post here.
It's vague as all get
out. It's vague, but it does say that it will be available next summer, which would be about 6 months from now.
But it said it was April. Next summer to me was
next, like the
coming
following.
Summer.
That's not how I read next.
Why would then I have a question. Why would you put out that press release a year and something in advance?
Why not?
No,
it's a press release.
No, that's
do
ridiculous.
it.
I think
because they reached the agreement.
Summer. No, they were reaching that summer.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'm mad.
You could be mad about it, but I don't think that they meant. I'm just, as I read this, in April or something, we'll see another announcement like, here it comes. And it will be available via the Intuit App Center. Not like, it'll probably just be like a plugin or something. And as I read this, it's, QuickBooks is going to have the ability to, basically they're going to be a big reseller of Salesforce.
Right, but it's going to sync. Like that.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, everybody in the world wants this.
Sure.
Although the QuickBooks Online stinks, but if it didn't stink, it would be great. Because it would be great, nice to have tight integration. Anyway, all right, fine. Maybe it's a joke, and maybe it's coming next summer.
It's not a joke. I think it's coming in the summer. We will you know what? We will revisit that in April.
If we're still doing this podcast in April.
We'll come back to that in April.
All right, fine. Next story.
Okay.
Speaking of a company that actually does have an online product that actually does synchronize with Salesforce, although is about Intacct. So
Intacct.
When people ask me about what are online solutions for ERP, for accounting, we generally say, we say there's QuickBooks Online. We say there's NetSuite, which is also a competitor to Salesforce in that they have their own CRM suite. And in fact, when I talked to the people at NetSuite, they basically admitted that, when we talk to customers, we're just like, we have a CRM. Why would you use Salesforce? I was like, oh, okay. Well, then, that's going to be fun doing business with you. And then Intacct, which, we looked at. And Intacct does a lot to actually, in their marketing and their promotional stuff, they do a lot to say, we're the step up from QuickBooks. Right? You go from QuickBooks and then you go to Intacct, which is a step up. We do an importation, and it's easy to use. It's not relatively priced the same, but it's it's priced monthly, and it's not as expensive as going to something like Financial Force, which can range up to $2,000-$3,000 a year. So they're now one of their releases. What I just find interesting is they're talking about doing a full integration with Salesforce
and Clarison.
Right.
Have you ever used Clarison?
I've never used Clarison.
Clarison's really good.
What is Clarison?
Clarison is take Microsoft Project and just pop it in the cloud.
Okay.
It does all that, like dependent tasks, assigning of tasks, Gantt charting, dragging and dropping, email in, alerts. It's actually really good. I used it in a previous job, and it's very robust. Like, if you really need project management software to the level of like a Microsoft project,
right,
you would use Clarison if you wanted to use something that was more, cloudy. Log in, collaborate, things of that nature. It's actually really pretty good.
So this is on Network World, and basically saying that they're gonna integrate Salesforce, Clarison, and Intacct all in one.
Makes sense. It sounds a lot like what Financial Force provides with Financial Force, the product, as the finance piece, and the professional services automation that they purchased from Aperio.
Right.
This sounds like a similar package, right? Intacct is the equivalent to what Financial Force proper is, and Clarison would be akin to what the PSA app does. Although I think the professional services automation is a little different than Clarison. Clarison's more strict project management, whereas professional services is more resource planning and things of that nature. But I'm sure that through this integration, that's part of it. There's got to be part that does the resource allocation and things of that nature.
It's
a nice little competitor.
It is. It's nice. I mean, it's a competitor,
I like to see it come out.
Built into, I think if someone could come up with a low cost, I've said this 100 times on this podcast, a low cost, integrated online accounting software that could be used, that was customizable enough to be used by small businesses, medium-sized businesses, nonprofits, they'd make a killing. Because there is nothing out there that I know. Because every time someone comes to us, we're like, well, here's the other options. But this step up from a $300 or $250 off-the-shelf QuickBooks to one of these is, the multiplier is a lot. It's not, only QuickBooks Online is like $39 a month. Everyone else is like $500, $1,000. They get up there. So interesting. So more stuff. So that was sort of my, where is QuickBooks while other people were moving. It kind of got me to go one way then the other. Next up, company bans email.
Internal email. Yeah. This came out earlier in the week.
I saw this in the elevator.
You saw it on Captivate?
I saw it on
Captivate Network?
Yes, I was captivated
I like the Captivate Network. So the company is called Atos, or Atos, A-T-O-S. It's a French company. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. They have 74,000 employees.
That's a lot.
Internally, they are turning off email. They're banning it.
By 2012, end of 2012, right?
I think 18 months. So,
okay.
Sometime in 2013, I guess. And what they're doing is, they've already said, or they've concluded that a vast majority of internal email is time-wasting noise, spam internally, things of that nature.
Right.
And they are switching all employees, and I'm air quoting, to a Facebook-like interface. What that's going to be, I don't know. It could be a Yammer, it could be a Chatter, it could be something they're building, which I would doubt. Something social, collaborative, and instant messenger. That's where they're going, to Facebook style and IM. And the the goal is focused totally on internal emails. Obviously, they're still going to have email because they have to email their clients and their partners. Obviously, you have to be able to get out and accept things in. But their CEO says he hasn't sent an email in 3 years, so he's just like anti-email. And there's some stats to prove it. There's like a chart that was included in this article about U.S. This is U.S. web-based email usage, year-over-year change from October 2010 to October 2011. And it's actually interesting when you look at the age difference. People aged 12 to 17 have, their change has been, they've stopped using email, negative 31%. Right. So there's a big drop in their email usage. And then as you get older, it kind of goes back upswing. Age 18 to 24, negative 21. Age 25 to 31, it's basically been even, negative 1%. But when you get to like age 35 and up, it's basically been rising anywhere between 5 or 10%, right, as it would. I imagine that those numbers will skew down as they basically say people are tweeting, people are texting, people are IMing, people are Facebooking more than anything to message each other. And this company's like, yeah, no more email, internal, done.
First of all, I need to say one thing.
Go ahead.
This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life.
Why is that?
Second of all, let me just have one scenario. You and I work at the company.
We do.
You and I are working together on a project.
We are.
And we're working on a project with one of our clients.
We are.
And I want to send an email.
Don't even try and copy me on it. Don't even try it. It won't work.
So that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Second of all, email isn't the problem. Email is a tool.
You're right.
I'll go back to Gary Vaynerchuk.
Please do.
Vaynerchuk. It's not about the tools. It's about how you use the tools. I'm not going to swear because this is not an explicit podcast, but it's not about the tools. It's not about email versus IM versus Chatter versus Yammer versus Yimmer versus Dimmer. For an example,
you made those last two.
No, I just invented them.
Oh, okay.
So we went on to look at the App Exchange today. Look at our App Exchange, compliance with Chatter, humble brag, and we were looking at the share with. There's a share with button,
right? And
you click it, and it comes up, I think, with 10. First 10. Then
10 little chiclets.
10 little chiclets. And it says more, and I'm like, ooh, what's more? 365 more underneath that of places to share and to tag and there were literally under Dig, because we were looking to see if Dig was still around. There were 17 named Dig something. It's like dig it, dug it, dug it, ding ding, ding dong. Dug. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I'm actually in a good mood just even thinking about how ridiculous it was.
I see it. You have a big smile on your face.
But the idea that you have to shut down email because I can't get.
Well,
here's the Are they going because they think it's a waste of time, or are they going because they think no one's using it? It
seems
like
they think it's a waste of time. But here's the thing: those stats, about I think they had stats on here. 10% of the 200 messages employees receive per day are useful, and 18% of it is spam.
So where's the other?
I don't know what the other 75% or 65% of those things are, but. Isn't the spam just going to move to the other communication channel?
So here's my other story.
People are going to do the things that they're going to do. I mean,
and I've told this story.
I think this is interesting. Don't get me wrong. It's interesting.
It's just
misguided. Not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's not going to solve any problem by just moving people from blasting one way to blasting another.
Right.
It just won't.
No. But here's the thing. I'm going to tell a story, and I've told this story before. The former company we worked at, we never talk about.
The big one?
Were you there for this? The shutting down of
Yes, I
Messenger?
was.
Right. So I think I've told this on the podcast.
Actually believe that when we were talking to the person about why he shut it down, I was the one who asked him, why did you shut it down?
Maybe you were. We were in this, whatever. So
we were in a little meeting.
We went from one email solution free to every year the big company had to replace the free thing with something that was internal and cost more.
This is Instant Messenger we're
Instant
talking
Messenger,
about.
right. So we had AIM, we had AOL Instant Messenger, then we went to Same Time.
IBM Same Time.
Then we went to Microsoft, whatever. And every time we went to one of these, the cost of it, internal, cost more. Don't know why the technology got to cost more, but it did. So it ended up where you were literally paying like $12 per user per month. So the guy looks at this big line item in his P&L, and he was probably had 500 people underneath him, and he goes, what the F? There's $12 times 500 times month, a lot of money. He's like, well, what are people doing? So he goes and gets some logs, and he looks at the logs. And of course, if you look at any logs at anything, you're going to be outraged. You're like, what are these people doing? They're talking about nothing. There's whatever. So then he says, shut it down. And then he shuts it down, and people come to him and say, why'd you shut it down? He goes, well, I shut it down because it's a waste of time. I haven't seen it. If you want to use it, you come to me. I'll look at your logs. We'll go through them together. And if you can prove that you're using it for business, then we'll do it. Otherwise, I see it as a waste of time. I don't use it, whatever. And that's the misguided part of this. A guy who doesn't use email to say that email isn't useful, it's like, well, you're the CEO. If you ask Mark Benioff to say, give up email, he'd be like, no, that's how I communicate with my clients. I get up on stage
Whoa, time out. Just to stop you for a second. They're not turning off email.
Internally.
Right. So
But it doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
Don't agree with me. I want to argue.
You can argue with me. It's a little...
It's misguided.
Well, we don't know the whole story. Maybe it's if you and I are working on something, as long as a client is in the to or the CC, it'll go out and we'll both get it. Who knows? I think it's still interesting to say that we're going full force to Instant Messenger and some sort of Facebook style collaboration for internal communication.
But here's the thing about Facebook, and we're big chatter users. We use Instant Messenger. We use all these things. We even, and we'll talk about it in a second, we now have even more places to have conversations. It's not about where to have the conversation. It's about the right use at the right time and having people trained to know what to use and what the best usage. Not everything is the best to use for everything. So it's not you can't just say, oh, no one should have internal email communications. There's good use cases and really good use cases to use internal communication via email. There's also bad use cases. Shooting back and forth. Hey, what? What do you want to do? I don't know. An email is a waste of email. That's a better instant message conversation. But there are times when email is very, very useful for imparting information. I feel like these guys, all they should have done is gone out, spend their money, and go hire Merlin Mann. And go over there and do a webinar for their 75,000 employees and tell them how to use email. Like, I feel like it's the thing that's missing from this world is that we throw out all these tools to people, but no one ever trains anybody on anything anymore. No one trains people on how to use things, how to use email. Like, it's the thing that you use more than anything else in the day, and yet no one trains you on it, right? It's like my thing with typing, and I know I've brought this up in podcasts before. Typing is the number one way we communicate. You put your hands on a keyboard for 10 hours a day, yet you probably haven't taken a typing refresh course in 15 to 20 years.
You're talking to me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, a refresher?
Yeah.
I did learn how to type. Like, really type.
Yeah, but 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, in like
Amazing
junior high school or
that
something.
You use more often than not, that is the key to your communication with 90% of the people in your life, you learned in high school and never gone back on. But the rest of the world, like, they don't...
Well, I can make... When was the last time you took a math refresher?
I don't use math that much.
You don't use math at all?
Can you see me how much times do up spot?
I'm
Spotlight?
pretty good at typing, I would say.
I'm saying that if it is that important, I think people should go back and spend more time on it.
When was the last time you refreshed your driver's ed?
Good example.
I know. That's why I brought it up.
It's something that people should. Well, we do. You have to re-get your license.
Redo what?
You
don't have to do anything. You have to send them money.
Exactly.
Mail them a piece of paper.
It's a bad thing. And like typing should be something that if I were running a company, every person would come in and have to take typing and have to be and get better at it, because you know how much faster you could. We've worked at companies, for example, where I've seen people sit with their 2 fingers. I'm now holding my 2 fingers. And stare down at the keyboard and go, bick, bick, bick.
Yeah, but that guy really knew his stuff.
No. He was the most unproductive person on the planet. He used to, instead of forwarding me emails, he would print them.
I remember that.
Walk up, go to the printer,
They weren't emails. They were green screen things that he would print out.
He printed emails, and instead of forwarding them, he would print them and then bring them to me.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Those are good practices.
Anyway, all right. I think this is interesting.
But it sparked a very good conversation.
But here's why I would be mad if they did this to me. The things that don't exist in IM and in instant message and Facebook social networks that still are better in email, read and unread state. It's the number one thing that they don't have. You can't tell what I have seen. I go into Facebook now and I'm like, I don't know if I'm missing 7 days worth of information or 7 minutes. I can't tell because it's like millions of lists of stuff, but it's no way of going through. You give me 3,000 emails in my inbox, I can go right through it and pound through it and sort through it and get through what I need to do because I know I've either read it or haven't read it. There's no sense of that. In IM, it's the same way. We used to have a thing when I had employees. I used to tell my employees, don't send me important information over IM. I'd be like, why? I'd be like, because if IM goes quick, if I click out that box by mistake or close it or shut down my computer without seeing it, that information goes away like that. It's not saved. It's not captured. I will never see it. And so you could have said, the world's on fire. We got to leave. You put it in IM. I wouldn't even see it.
Good.
Right. And it doesn't follow me across multiple devices, which email does. Email is still the best tool. It's totally badly used by a lot of people, but that doesn't mean just there's bad drivers on the road. Let's just shut down all the cars.
Well, you should.
Yeah, shut it down.
Shut it down. All right. No more gas.
I've had my nice rant.
Yeah, you have.
So why don't we talk about, speaking of collaboration,
Speaking of,
why don't we talk about our move off of Google Wave? I don't know why anybody would be interested in this because probably no one's using Google Wave at this point.
Yeah, but we talk about it so often that I think it warrants a panel discussion.
A panel discussion?
Well,
are we inviting other people to the panel?
We should have.
All right.
But let's not call it a panel discussion then. So, like we said last week, we got the warnings, the emails, and when we were logging into our... you're doing things in the Google Doc in front of me. When we logged into our Wave instance, there was a nice big warning message at the top that said, this Wave will turn read-only starting January something or other.
End of January 2012.
Yeah. And basically this thing's going to explode in April. Yeah. So get your stuff and get out of here. So basically
you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
You pretty much have to get out of here. So, I think there are two things to talk about. Number one, I don't really like this Google trend of shutting things down. Now, I understand they have to shut things down from time to time because it's just people aren't using it and you can't support everything forever and you have to cut bait and the innovator's dilemma and things of that nature. Yeah. But when you take a product like this and forget all the fanfare that it had going for it at its release, because when they released it, it was a BFD.
Yeah, it was.
And it was like email 2.0 and whatever, right?
Yeah.
What to me makes this kind of a travesty is that they went beyond the whole this is a labs project. They integrated this with the Google Apps suite.
But I feel like this is what we've been saying for about a year and a half.
But I don't know if I have another example of Google integrating with the Google Apps, the enterprise Google Apps single sign-on suite. I don't think we have another example of them shutting anything like that down before.
But we've been saying that for a year and a half. Are we still mad about this?
Yeah. All right. I mean, if you're going to have people pay for your service and then go so far as to take it out of labs, take it out of beta, include it in the single sign-on, what are you doing?
No, I keep talking. Okay. You put it in the single sign-on.
you can't just turn it off. I mean, I know they're not just turning it off, but they're you have a pick or something that you're doing. What are you doing?
I'm broadcasting.
Oh, that's not broadcasting at all. You can't just turn it off like that. Like, again, they gave us fair warning. They know the usage patterns, whatever. They know the usage patterns. They know people probably weren't using it. But as soon as you say this is part of the enterprise package,
right?
And this is a bit of a, not really a black eye, but a little sucker punch to the nose on cloud computing. Because at any moment, Google can decide, hey, Microsoft can't necessarily do this to some piece of software that you have installed in your data center. Nope. They can stop supporting it, but you can certainly pay them more to continue supporting it.
Maybe you have, I don't know, something that you can build presentations with, and it's included in your license, and you use it all the time, and then all of a sudden they say, we're not going to include it anymore.
Poo-poo on Salesforce as well.
It happens. But here's the thing. It's always the back and forth. You want cloud computing, you want instant upgrades, you want to not have to worry about it, you want to be on the latest, greatest software, then you got to take down the other side. If you want to be on whatever software you want to be on for the rest of your life, then that's where you own it. So it is the pros and cons.
So now that I've gotten that.
I actually think here's my problem with the whole thing. I don't care that they did it. Fine. I get it. I get it, the enterprise. I get the including Google Apps, blah.
That's not blah, but go ahead.
It's all blah. The thing that I think they made the worst mistake on is that getting from this to something else is impossible. Near impossible.
It's really difficult.
It's difficult.
So let's talk through just briefly. We have been for the last week. This was Waveless Week at Arkus.
Yep.
So,
and we picked Google Docs.
We did. We went through. I wouldn't say that we went through an exhaustive effort in trying to find, but we have all of us have been looking.
I personally
at different products. Products that there were certain criteria. We wanted it to, obviously, we don't want to have to log into something else. We want it to be integrated with the things that we're already using single sign-on, the Google password, or Salesforce password or something. We wanted it to be real time.
Don't brush over that, because that was the decider.
Basically that was.
That was the George Bush
real time.
Decider.
We wanted comment threading. We wanted pervasive chat and just presence and things of that nature that Wave brought.
Right.
And you know what? Google Docs is basically where we landed. It has Wave-like features where you can do the real-time typing. I'm watching you type right now, and I can see that it's you typing. There's a chat on the sidebar where we can see who else is on this doc at this time, which is actually better than Google Wave, right? Google Wave didn't do that unless you were typing in it.
Google, huge feature.
It has shortcut keys.
Huge feature you probably don't even notice.
Tell me.
You probably haven't noticed it yet.
I probably have, but go ahead.
There's no edit.
No, you just hop in and you're in. Remember when I said I'm so used to hitting Shift Return?
Oh, yeah. That's what I didn't know what you're saying.
Yeah, like in Google Wave, for those who haven't used it, you jump into the editor, you either double-click inside of a message, or you right-click and hit Edit, and you start typing, and then when you're done typing, you hit Shift Return, or you click the Done button, and that means you're done editing. And in a doc, you just sort of jump in and start typing, and it's saving the whole time. You don't have to think about saving, or I did lose messages in Wave by not hitting Shift Return, navigating away, and it was gone.
Right.
And so far, I gotta say, the biggest headache is going back into the Wave to get things, and then saying to myself, well, I'm just going to grab the whole thing because I don't want to have to come back here, and this is going to go away in 5-6 months anyway. I got to move it. So what we've been doing, just to give everybody who's got Wave, you can export a Wave to HTML. Yep. I've given you two options. You can export a Wave to HTML. You can export a Wave to a zip file. So we've been exporting it to HTML, importing it to Microsoft Word, stripping out a bunch of the HTML doodads and images and things that just come across, and then uploading that, saving it as a docx, and then uploading those into the Google Docs using the convert feature, and it converts it to a doc, and it works okay.
Yeah.
Copying and pasting things from Wave into Docs doesn't work. It
Nope.
adds bullets everywhere.
I've tried everything.
We've tried a lot of things.
And it came down to that one. That was the best. And then, well, on the Wave side, we then mark it as migrated, and then we delete it, so then it goes out of the main view. My guess is we're going to end up moving probably 50 to 100, and the rest we're just going to export as PDFs and just throw them on our cloud LAN, and just say that's
It's a bit of a shame because it was our intranet for over a year.
Yeah,
It
well,
really
our intranet
was.
before that was sites.
Our intranet before that was a Google site.
And before that, right, so, the point is you move off these things. In some ways it's nice and refreshing to kind of be like, all right, bye. I actually have found my only thing that I really, really, really miss, and I wish I could get this, is I miss the view. I miss having a view of documents on one side, being able to click on it and just open up here.
Wave was like an inbox. You went in and there was a list of all the waves, and they had the red on red state.
Yep.
So they'd be bold, and you'd see a number of how many messages did I miss or whatever.
Yep.
Docs has the same, like if you jump into the folder, you open up Docs,
Yep.
they're bold,
Yep.
but it doesn't have the split pane view,
Right.
which is what made Wave, I think, a little special.
But
where
that's it.
It had that inbox
But
view.
if this had a split plane view, I would, everything else would be fine.
Yep.
I mean, all the other features, the collections, the sharing is better, the commenting is different, but in some ways better. The email and commenting works. You can comment in and out of email. It tracks it. The red on red state, the naming conventions, the editing features are better. I mean, there's so much that is better about Docs. Oh, the mobile support is great. You can actually go in and edit everything on a mobile device. iPad, iPhone, works in the browser, works really well. Exporting is much better. You can export as anything in the world.
The one, I mean, it's been a pretty smooth transition. The one thing that that I find much easier about Wave than Docs is the sharing.
You cannot read and talk, can you, at the same time?
I had to close my eyes. So, the sharing is not quite as good. Like with Wave, you create a wave and it's click, 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 and people are added to it. The sharing of a doc is a little confusing. You have to share it with an individual. Do you have to share it with the whole company?
Here's a trick.
Yeah.
Go to the comments and just comment in people, and it automatically shares it with them.
Oh, is that why you did that to me earlier?
Yep.
And then you just resolved it immediately?
If you just commented any people, it just adds them right to the wave. Adds them right to the doc.
That's good.
There are so many tricks and tips I've learned. I've becoming like a master.
Yeah, I like the shortcut keys. I like a bunch of a bunch of stuff that exists in Docs, and Docs is core. Docs is not going anywhere. I think we can feel pretty secure in our
And that was the
usage
thing.
of
Like
Google
our
Docs.
next stop was going to be something that we're going to look back on and go, this isn't going away anytime soon. So, all right. Well, let's get to our CloudFocus App Pick of the Weeks. Apparently, I'm picking a new one because you've already picked it.
Yeah, that's why you have to actually put your picks in the doc. I know you don't like to do that because you want to surprise me.
That's right.
But I was able to decipher by what you were doing to me before, plus the acronym that you put here, that you were going to pick something that I've already picked. So I'll go first and allow you a moment to pick something new. I did, right?
No, not the one I have.
Yeah,
not
I did.
Not for Salesforce.
I did. Trust me.
It says drag and dictation for iPhone, not for Salesforce.
Trust me. You might have written that wrong. He was going to pick drag and dictation for Salesforce, but I've picked that already. I remember talking specifically about how you can send in to Chatter and you can create tasks or something along those lines. So,
can I pick OmniFocus again?
Sure. All right. So I'll go first.
Well, you always go first.
And, I've noticed over the last week or two, Evernote has released a bunch of applications and is becoming a nice little platform for note-taking, and they've acquired a few companies, and they did the Sketch thing, and so I'm going to pick one of the apps that they just launched. It's called Food, Evernote Food for iOS. I'm a foodie. I love food. And what Evernote Food does is it allows you to create, it's not necessarily like a recipe book, because Evernote's actually really good for that. I actually use Evernote with a tag called recipes. So I have a lot of notes in Evernote that are tagged recipe for recipes. But Food allows you to, using location, you can take a picture of something that you're eating, food. It recognizes some suggestions for where you might be, a restaurant, and you can tag it, select it, and essentially it creates this nice note of and history of notes of these are some really good places I've eaten, and this is what I ate, and it's like a running
like
diary.
Is it social?
It can be, because you can then share your food out to Twitter or Facebook or a public Evernote notebook, because it integrates perfectly with Evernote. So I set up Evernote Food on my phone. I snap a picture of the salad I ate this afternoon.
That's just wrong.
And say I got it from Chopped. And then all of a sudden, I go to Evernote on my Mac, and there's a note. And it integrated just perfectly, because you're logging in with your Evernote username and password. So they're really creating this little ecosystem of all the things that you would, create or capture as far as notes. And I know they have a bunch of other apps that they've been toying around with, and Sketch that they purchased. So they're really coming together. I think.
Evernote is fascinating.
Super powerful.
I wish it was. The only thing is it's a little bit I use it all the time.
Me too.
I actually am having a problem. I could make this a pick too, but I have a thing with my PDFs. I keep all my PDFs. I scan things in, and I've been always putting them in something called Yelp, which I'm not going to make a pick.
Not Yelp, the rating system.
No, sorry, Yep. It's called Yep.
Okay.
And it does organization and tagging of PDFs, and I really like it, but I find that I want to use Evernote more. But Evernote's sort of, going forward. Like, I want the reason to use Evernote forever, and I'm kind of testing it for 2 years, and I want to dump literally 400 or 500, maybe 600 PDFs into Evernote and sort of have it just figured out, like all my statements, but I have to trust it more.
I wish Evernote was more integrated into iOS, because I find that I use it there more, but then refer back to it elsewhere. And that's what I like about Evernote, is that it's everywhere. It's on the web, it's on my machine as an installed client, and it's on my phone, so I can sort of just get to it from anywhere. I wish Apple would just say, you know what, screw it, the Notes app on the phone is no one using it. Evernote's awesome. We're gonna do what we did with Twitter. We're not gonna buy Evernote. We're just gonna really tightly integrate it into the OS. I would really enjoy that. I mean,
here's what I want, and here's the idea of the
I don't want to have to open Evernote to enter a note. I just want to be able to enter a note. Maybe when I get Siri and there's some APIs, I'll be able to tell Siri to do something for me. But until then,
here's what I want. I want Dropbox and Evernote as one. I want a folder I can put stuff into. I can just drag and drop C in a folder hierarchy on my desktop. But then I also want to be able to go and type a note on a thing and have it show up in that folder hierarchy.
Yeah.
I want the combo. And because they both do online syncing, they both do all this stuff, but Dropbox plus Evernote, if you just connected them, built them together somehow so the files would show up in both places, I'd be happy. All right. So I was going to pick this other one.
What's your pick?
So now I'm going to pick something else. I'm going to pick, it actually came out a while ago, and it's not spelled that way. It's spelled this way. It's called Evernote Peak.
Oh, you're picking an Evernote product.
Yeah, because you went Evernote. So
I did go Evernote.
So it's a product that's based on the iPad 2.
Right.
And with the magnetic screen.
I've heard of this product.
Yeah. And basically what it is a sort of an app to help you do sort of like test taking or questions.
I remember it being something about those. Remember you had cards, like you're learning Spanish. Flashcards. Right.
So the idea is that you have Evernote Peak and you lift up the well, if it's running.
You have to open it.
Yeah, I had it running. Maybe it crashed. Maybe it just stinks. So
you'd pick an app that stinks?
No, I would not. I would never do that. So the idea is, you lift up the thing, it comes on, and it'll ask you a question. Then you can lift it up to see the answer.
Oh,
right. You put it down, lift it up again.
I remember them touting this because it was the first, or one of the first. I don't want to say it was the first definitively, but one of the first applications written specifically to work with the hardware spec of the iPad 2, because it works very specifically with the iPad 2 and the cover.
Right, and the cover.
Because it's got to flip open once, and it shows the thing, and then you flip it open again. Right. Nice little study tool, interactive, turn of the century flashcards.
They've built
right?
on games now on
Have
them. You can download the flips, what they're peaks, whatever they're called. I haven't used it a lot. I kind of liked that you picked an Evernote thing. I thought I'd pick another Evernote thing.
We could pick Evernote things for weeks. There's a couple of Evernote apps out there now.
There's lots of integrations. I know there's like not FTP. I know there's fax integrations. I know there's some other cool ones. I've even seen and installed and played with a Salesforce integration for Evernote.
Me too. I've done it.
It just didn't work.
It's not that good.
It didn't work the way I
wanted
it to.
But I also toyed with the Evernote Salesforce integration.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this would be good. Notes that sync in one place and the other. It just wasn't that great.
Yeah, it wasn't that great. All right, well, that's it. That's the CloudFocus App Pick of the Week and the episode of CloudFocus. Thanks for joining us. Again, go to blog.arkusinc.com. Subscribe by RSS. That's really simple syndication. It is so simple. Follow the company at arkusinc.com, ARKUSINC. I'm at Jason M. Atwood. Justin's at Just Edelstein. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/ArkusInc. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Leave a nice review there. Remember to post on either the blog posts or the podcast posts on the blog. We use Discuss. You can leave comments there. It's a nice little system. You can log in with any kind of any profile in the world, including Facebook and Twitter. You can log in with anything, so you don't actually have to be a member of our blog. You just log in, and that works really well. And do that because it's fun and we like it. And until next week, well, enjoy those cloudy days.